Huffaker Hawks. This is Mrs. R. And remember how I had to split up the video? Well, this is the part 2 of that video. So go ahead and enjoy. Chapter 15, the electric chair. To say that the Buckman doorbell rang would be inaccurate. Something had happened to the bell. Its inner workings had become twisted, warped, confused. So instead of emitting a pleasant ding or bong, the doorbell now sent an angry, window-shattering, you guessed the wrong answer on a game show kind of buzz through the Buckman house. To Flora, the doorbell sounded like the electric chair. Not that she'd ever heard an electric chair, but she had read about electric chairs and terrible things can happen to you. The particular installment of the comic had not contained any advice other than it would be best to avoid getting to a place in your life where you might have to face the electric chair and any noises it was capable of making. Flora had found it to be vaguely threatening and not at all useful issue of terrible things. That's your father, said Flora's mother. He rings that doorbell to make me feel guilty. The doorbell buzzed and crackled again. See, said her mother. Flora didn't see. How could one person ringing a doorbell make another person feel guilty? That's ridiculous. But then, just about everything that Flora's mother said or wrote sounded faintly ridiculous to Flora. For example, on feathered wings of joy. Since when did joy have feathered wings? Don't just stand there, Flora Belle. Go open the door. Let him in. He's your father. He's here to see you, not me. The electric chair knell of the doorbell sounded through the house again. For the love of Pete, said her mother. What's he doing? Leaning on that thing? Go let him in, would you? Flora walked slowly through the dining room and into the living room. She shook her head in amazement. Upstairs in her room, there was a squirrel who could lift a vacuum cleaner over his head with one paw. Upstairs in her room, there was a squirrel who could type. Holy bagumba, thought Flora. Things are going to change around here. We're going to be vanquishing villains left and right. She smiled a very large smile. The doorbell gave another outraged sizzle. Flora was still smiling when she unlocked the door and opened it wide. Chapter 16, Victims of Extended Hallucinations. It was not her father at the door. It was Trudy. Trudy Tickum, said Flora. Trudy stepped through the door and into the living room, and then she stopped. Her eyes widened. What in the world, she said? Flora didn't even bother turning around. She knew what Trudy was looking at. That's the little shepherdess, said Flora, the guardian of lost sheep and light or something. She belongs to my mother. Right, said Trudy. She shook her head. Well, never mind about the lamp. She took another step closer to Flora. Where's the squirrel? She whispered. Upstairs, Flora whispered back. I've come to check and see if what I think happened yesterday actually happened, or if I'm the victim of an extended hallucination. Flora looked Trudy in the eye. She said, Ulysses can type. Who can type? The squirrel. He's a superhero. Trudy said, oh, for heaven's sake, what kind of superhero types? It was a good and also slightly disturbing point. How exactly was a typing squirrel going to fight villains and change the world? George, shouted Flora's mother. It's not Pop, Flora shouted back. It's Mrs. Tickum. There was silence from the kitchen, and then Flora's mother came into the living room with a big, fake adult smile plastered on her face. Mrs. Tickum, she said, what a lovely surprise. What can we do for you? Trudy smiled a big, fake adult smile back. Oh, she said, I just came to pay Flora a visit. Who? Flora, said Trudy, your daughter. Really, said Flora's mother. You came to see Flora? I'll be right back, said Flora. She ran out of the living room and through the dining room. What a truly extraordinary lamp, she heard Trudy say. Oh, do you like it? Said Flora's mother. Ha, thought Flora. And then she was out of the dining room into the kitchen. She ripped the paper out of the typewriter and looked down at the words. They were absolutely not a hallucination. Holy bagumba, said Flora. A loud scream echoed through the house. Flora took the paper and shoved it down the front of her pajamas and ran back into the living room. Ulysses was sitting on top of Mary Ann. Or rather, he was trying to sit on top of Mary Ann. His feet were scrabbling to gain purchase on the little shepherdess's pink flowered lampshade. He paused in his efforts and looked at Flora in an apologetic and hopeful way, and then he turned to wobbling back and forth. Oh my goodness, said Trudy. How did it get in here? Shouted Flora's mother. It just came flying down the stairs. Yes, said Trudy. She gave Flora a meaningful look. Flying. It absolutely scared the living daylights out of me, and Mrs. Tickum, we screamed. We did, said Trudy. We screamed. There's just no end to the excitement. If that squirrel breaks my lamp, I don't know what I'll do. Mary Ann is very precious to me. Mary Ann, said Trudy. I'll just get him off the lamp, okay, said Flora. She put out a hand. Don't touch it, screamed her mother. It has a disease. And here's a picture of Ulysses on Mary Ann the lamp. The doorbell, as if it were echoing Flora's mother's advice, buzzed its terrible warning buzz. Flora and her mother and Trudy all turned. A small voice called out. The voice said, "Great Aunt Trudy?" Chapter 17, I Smell Squirrel. There was a boy at the door. He was short and his hair was so blonde that it looked almost white. His eyes were hidden behind enormous dark glasses. In addition to Terrible Things That Can Happen to You, The Illuminated Adventures of the Amazing Incandesto, regularly featured a second bonus comic entitled The Criminal Element is Among Us. The criminal element gave very specific pointers on how to never ever be fooled by a criminal. And one of the oft-repeated dictums of the criminal element was that the best way to get to know a person was to look him or her directly in the eye. Flora tried to look the boy in the eye, but all she saw was a reflection of herself in his dark glasses. She looked short and uncertain, like an accordion in pajamas. "William," said Trudy, "I told you to stay put." "I heard screaming," said the boy. His voice was high and thin. "I was concerned. I came in as fast as I could. Unfortunately, on the way over here, I had a small but extremely violent encounter with some variety of shrub, and now I'm bleeding. I think I'm bleeding. I'm pretty sure I smell blood, but no one should be concerned. Please don't overreact." "This," said Trudy, "is my nephew." "Great nephew," said the boy, "and I hope I don't need stitches." "Do you think I need stitches?" "His name is William," said Trudy. "William Spiver, actually," said Trudy's nephew. "Oh," said Flora's mother. She clapped her hands. How wonderful. A little friend for Flora. "I don't need a little friend," said Flora. "Of course you do," said her mother. She turned to Trudy. "Flora is very lonely. She spends far too much time reading comics. I've tried to break her of the habit, but I'm very busy with my novel writing, and she's alone a lot. I'm worried that it has made her strange." "I'm not strange," said Flora. This seemed like a safe statement to make when someone as truly profoundly strange as William Spiver was standing next to her. "I would be happy to be your friend," said William Spiver. "Honored," he bowed. "How lovely," said Flora's mother. "Yes," said Flora, "how lovely." "The blind," said William Spiver, "even the temporarily blind, have an excellent sense of smell." "Oh, for heaven's sake," said Trudy, "here we go. I have to tell you that I smell something out of the ordinary, something that is not usually smelled within the confines of the human domestic sphere," said William Spiver. He cleared his throat. "I smell squirrel." "Squirrel?" Confronted with the spectacle of William Spiver, they had forgotten about Ulysses. Flora and her mother and Trudy all turned around and looked at Ulysses. He was still on top of Marianne. He had managed to balance himself on the small blue and green globe that was at the center of the lampshade. "That squirrel," said her mother. "He's rabid diseased. He's got to go." Chapter 18, A Scientific Adventure. "Why don't you let me take the squirrel?" Trudy said to Flora's mother. "I'll just return him to the wild." "If you can call the backyard the wild," said William Spiver. "Hush up, William," said Trudy. She reached out for Ulysses. "Don't touch it," shrieked Flora's mother. "Not without gloves. It has some sort of disease." "If you could just get me some gloves then," said Trudy. "I'll pluck the squirrel off the lampshade and whisk him off and set him free. The kids can come along. It'll be a scientific adventure," said Trudy. "It doesn't sound very scientific to me," said William Spiver. "Well," said Flora's mother, "I don't know. Flora Bell's father is coming to pick her up for their Sunday visit. He'll be here any minute now, and she's still in pajamas." "Flora Bell?" said William Spiver. "What a lovely melodious name." "It will all take just a minute," said Trudy in a low, soothing voice. "The kids can get to know each other." "I'll get you some gloves," said Flora's mother. And so now there they were, walking over to Trudy's, getting to know one another or something. Trudy had on a pair of dishwashing gloves that went all the way up to her elbows. The gloves were bright pink and they glowed in a cheery, radioactive sort of way. In Trudy's gloved hands was Ulysses. Behind Trudy was Flora. And next to Flora was William Spiver. His left hand rested on her shoulder. "Do you mind, Flora Bell?" he had said. "Would it trouble you terribly if I put my hand on your shoulder and allowed you to guide me back to Great Aunt Trudy's house? The world is a treacherous place when you can't see." Flora didn't bother pointing out to him that the world was a treacherous place when you could see. And speaking of treacherousness, things were not in any way progressing as Flora had planned. She had envisioned Ulysses fighting crime, criminals, villainy, darkness, treachery. She had imagined him flying, holy bagumba, through the world with her, Flora Buckman, at his side. Instead, she was leading a temporarily blind boy through his own backyard, and it was anticlimactic, to say the least. "Have you released the squirrel yet, Great Aunt Trudy?" "No," said Trudy, "I have not." "Why do I sense that there's more going on here than meets the eye?" said William Spiver. "Just keep quiet until we get back to the house, William," said Trudy. "Can you do that? Keep quiet for a minute?" "Of course I can," William Spiver said. He sighed. I'm an old pro at keeping quiet. Flora doubted very much that this was true. William Spiver squeezed her shoulder. May I inquire now how old you are, Florabelle? Don't squeeze my shoulder, I'm 10. I'm 11 years old, said William Spiver, which surprises me, I must say. I feel much, much older than 11. Also, I know for a fact that I'm smaller than your average 11-year-old. It may even be that I'm shrinking. Excessive trauma can retard growth. I'm not certain, however, if it's causing actual shrinkage. What was the traumatic event that turned you blind, said Flora. I'd prefer not to discuss it right now. I don't want to alarm you. It's not possible to alarm me, said Flora. I'm a cynic. Nothing in human nature surprises a cynic. So you say, said William Spiver. The word cryptic popped into Flora's head. It was preceded by the word unnecessarily. Unnecessarily cryptic, said Flora out loud. I beg your pardon, said William Spiver. But then they were at Trudy's house. They were walking through her backyard and into her kitchen, which smelled like bacon and lemons. Trudy put Ulysses down on the table. I don't understand, said William Spiver. We're back at your house, but I can still smell the squirrel. Flora took the paper out of her pajamas. She handed it to Trudy. She felt like a spy, a successful spy, a triumphant spy, albeit a spy in pajamas. What's this, said Trudy. It's proof that you aren't the victim of an extended hallucination, said Flora. Trudy held the paper with both hands. She stared at it. Squirrel tell, she said. Squirrel tell, said William Spiver. Keep reading, said Flora. Squirrel tell, said Trudy. I am Ulysses, born anew. See, said Flora. What does that prove, said William Spiver. What does it even mean? The squirrel's name is Ulysses, said Trudy. Wait a minute, said William Spiver. Are you positing that the squirrel typed these words? Yes, said Flora. That's exactly what I'm saying. The hallucination extends, said Trudy. What hallucination, said William Spiver. The squirrel as a superhero hallucination, said Trudy. Surely you jest, said William Spiver. Ulysses sat up on his hind legs. He looked at William Spiver and then Trudy, and then he finally turned his eyes to Flora. He raised his eyebrows and gave her a look full of questions, full of hope. Flora felt a pang of doubt. He was, after all, just a squirrel. She had no proof that he was a superhero. What if there was some other explanation for those words? Also, there was Trudy's disturbing point to consider. What kind of superhero types? And then she thought about Alfred. How everyone doubted him. How no one except the parakeet Dolores knew that he was incandesto. And how no one except Dolores truly believed him. Was it Flora's job to believe in Ulysses? And what did that make her, a parakeet? Let me get this straight, said William Spiver. You, a self-professed cynic, are proposing that the squirrel is a superhero. The words, do not hope, instead observe, flitted through Flora's brain. She took a deep breath. She brushed the phrase away. The squirrel typed those words, she said. Well, said William Spiver, whose hand was still on Flora's shoulder. Why didn't he move his hand? Let's just approach this scientifically. We'll put the squirrel in front of Great Aunt Trudy's computer and we'll ask him to type. Again. Chapter 19. The Inadvertent Eye. He sat in front of the machine. It was different than Flora's mother's typewriter. There was a blank screen instead of paper, and the whole contraption glowed, emitting a warm but not entirely friendly smell. The keyboard was familiar, though. Each of the letters were there, each of them in its place. Flora and Trudy stood behind him, and William Spiver, the boy with the dark glasses, stood behind him too. This was an important moment. Ulysses understood that very well. Everything depended on him typing something. He had to do it for Flora. His whiskers trembled. He could feel them trembling. He could see them trembling. What could he do? He turned and sniffed his tail. There was nothing he could do except be himself, to try to make the letters on the keyboard speak the truth of his heart, to work to make them reveal the essence of the squirrel he was. But what was the truth? And what kind of squirrel was he? He looked around the room. There was a tall window. Outside the window was the green world and the blue sky. Inside, there were shelves and shelves of books, and on the wall, above the keyboard, was a picture of a man and a woman floating over a city. They were suspended in golden light. The man was holding the woman, and she had one arm flung out in front of her face as if she were pointing the way home. Ulysses liked the woman's face. She reminded him of Flora. Looking at the painting made the squirrel feel warm inside, certain of something. Whoever had painted the picture loved the floating man and the floating woman. He loved the city they floated above. He loved the golden light. Just as Ulysses loved the green world outside and the blue sky and Flora's round head. His whiskers stopped trembling. What's happening? Said William Spiver. Nothing, said Flora. He's gone into some sort of trance, said Trudy. Shh, said Flora. Ulysses inched closer to the keyboard. It was beautiful to the squirrel to see a letter appear out of nowhere. That's an I, William Spiver. Well, what is that? What's the letter? But the That proves nothing, of course. Anyone can inadvertently hit an I. You don't have to be a superhero to type an I. Would you please hush up, William? The squirrel typed, the people waited, destiny bestirred itself. And so what you can see is the squirrel typing I, 0. And that's where I'll stop. We will continue with chapter 20 through 29 next time. Huffaker Hawks, thank you so much for sitting through this video. I know it's a little long, but look at how far we made it through the book. I plan to do 5 more videos and we'll finish the book. Lickety split. We'll find out what happens to Ulysses. Is he really typing this stuff? I don't know. Stay safe out there and I hope you're having a good day. Remember to pick up a book.